Okay, guys, before this show starts, I just have to say the newest release of this Jadu fighting game is even more brutal, pitting us against as Avas against each other in AR combat. Now, look, have we learned nothing from the historical documentary film Tron and a much more heavy-handed propaganda Tron Legacy? We need to stop this violence. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm sorry, you didn't have permission to do this. Oh, Mr. Permissionless. Now all of a sudden you got to be permission more? Look, this is exactly why we're doing the show today. Today is all about, how I can create a pacifist bunny lover from a fighting game and the creative framework, within existing Web3 projects and how we work within those. We lovingly call these things, and you'll find them in the Discords, layer twos. And so today we're bringing on at Kisher, who is, to give us a perspective from builders, creators, as Kisher is a creative director for BPX Collective and Barefoot Republic, who has a new Web3 based game that I thought was really well played and to define themselves and present a fun way in which to share other side traits. So welcome, Kisher. Hey man,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me? Am I good?
Absolutely. I hear you. I feel you. And I love the work that's being done because there was a really strong sense of like, hey, there's like, this other concept that's outside of, the main game of other side. And for us, it's kind of like, oh, it's a derivative. But I think there's something much more being created when you're adding utility to the derivative, when you're adding gamification to the derivative that has so much more value. And I love seeing this type of work. And so I know there's a lot of creators out there who are like, oh, how do I get in? I get questions like this all the time. Like, how do I start doing my own 10K TF thing? And there's so much fear and apprehension about how to approach it. And so I really wanted to bring you on for your approach. But, before we get to that, how is it that you came to Web3 as a creative director? Because those are some big boy pants. That's not an easy job to do.
Thank you. Well, it was kind of a serendipitous journey for me. I started collecting cards back in when I was young, and that's relevant later in this story, like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. And in college, I started in computer science and engineering and quickly realized that spending nights searching for colons and commas in my code base was not something that I was interested in doing. And so quickly switched into design and cut my teeth in the Chicago advertising scene before coming back out to LA to start my own creative agency. And
we share that similar sunshine. I don't know if you guys can tell that LA sunshine is pouring in from both of our windows here.
Gorgeous day out today. Yeah. And, since I moved back, I've just kind of had my hands in a lot of pies. I did a lot of creative work in the early VR days, and I've done a lot of production work and kind of just ended up finding myself in Discord. Web3 really combines this beautiful amalgamation of art and technology, and that's really my background. And the card thing comes back into it because I was in the early Block Packs Discord, which is now the BPX Collective, and they had this really interesting idea where they've gamified card collecting. And one day I just basically said, hey, do you guys need a creative director? I was unemployed at the time, searching for clients, and as it turned out, they did.
It's important to pitch yourself in those Discords. You have access. That's the great thing about the space in Web3 is you have so much access through Discord, through Twitter, and these types of engagement where, maybe you just want to show something. You can just start showing off your skills immediately and then have that conversation saying like, hey, yeah, I can bring what I'm doing here to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess, just what was the worst they said? No, really.
And I think you guys, this is the latest Bantam Brigade, and is this the first collaboration? Because you've been with them for a while, so I don't imagine this is the first collaboration, Bantam Brigade.
What do you mean by collaboration?
Well, project that you guys are putting forth into the world.
Yeah. So when I first came on, BPX Collective is one thing, but they had another project which started as one thing and had a lot of FUD surrounding it. And my job essentially was to take uh, the Barefoot Republic, which is now known, and really turn the ship around. And so this is really the first kind of big push since the ship's been turned around. And so yeah, I guess you could say this is my first big release with the group, with the company.
And so how did you approach this idea? It's sort of like this novel concept of like, okay, we have the other side, and there's a trading game that you guys wanted to build on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think an important piece of the puzzle is I also shortly after the other deeds minted about a year ago, founded the Other Guild, which is one of the largest groups of creators on the other side. And so I've been deeply plugged in with that community for quite a while and just been fascinated by how they're building the technology and the story, especially, and just the way, like really the like never been done before way in which they're kind of building and releasing this game. So it's something that I found as a creator, like I really wanted to, if this is really going to be the metaverse, like I want to be building one of the first projects in it.
Hmm.
And then I love Pokemon, and like that's a big part of that inspiration as well.
And building a trading game, a card trading game on top of it. When you start this process as creative director, obviously because you're in the guild and you've developed the guild and you've led the guild, you know a lot of the ins and outs and sort of the nuances of the game as it's being released. I mean, everything it seems like that we've gotten a wave of information lately, but as more details come in, how is it that you're approaching building from your side as you're getting more and more details?
We just, my boss, Frenchie, who also is a big part of, the creation of this game. I mean, the mechanics of the game are really his brainchild since he was a child. And so we've always drilled down on like, keep the story simple. We don't know what the other side story is going to be, and we don't want to go off too far in one direction and then get caught with, our pants down, quote unquote. And so it's a light storyline, and we also kind of just, the Barefoot Republic is kind of our little slice of the metaverse, so we're keeping a lot of the story encapsulated on our 24 project owned pieces of deeds.
And I think that's the brilliant part is like, there's this idea of metaverse and multiverse and like, having individual storylines associated with characters, and what you guys are doing with lands, I think is so fantastic. And with Bantam, are you bringing characters to to these lands? Let me show these guys. They look so cool.
Yeah, they're really badass, man. I'm can I curse on here? I don't know. But yeah, they turned out really cool.
When necessary, which is
when
often
necessary.
dealing with this market. And so like that was the first thing that sort of caught my eye was this art was being shared on Twitter, and I was just like, oh, what's this? And then I was just like, okay, so it's associated with, clearly, because I could tell like with the naming conventions, and sort of on the lower left corner here, you guys have Moss Moon, like some of the traits. I was like, oh, these are the traits, the resources in Other Side.
Right. Yeah. And the cool thing is each of these characters, they're connected to, again, a resource that our project owns on a deed that is owned by us. And the fun thing is like eventually what the plan is like these are the first 27 Bantams, but there's 74 resources in the other side, and each of the resources get a sea, a sky, and a land creature. So you also see on the other left hand side that demarcation. And the way the game is played is you'll see the power number on each of the cards, and it's super simple. And eventually we'll have versions where you can play a more complex game, but the base game is like you lay 7 cards down. You essentially play a style of war where you flip your cards and you battle based on the number, and if there's a tie, it's like a rock paper scissors. Sky beats land, land beats sea, sea beats sky, I think, something like that. And that's how you build. And that's and eventually we'll have artifacts and potions and all sorts of cool stuff to complicate the game a little bit more, to make it more like Pokemon, but super simple to play.
The thing that really blew my mind is that if you're playing this game, so here the power number, the 5 is like the power number. We see the sky demarcation, and then we see on the lower right we see the resource. And so I was like, okay, so it's based on these things, and you play the game, but then like, is if I win, do I get resources, like other side resources?
So that's kind of where the BPX collective side of the ecosystem comes in. Again, this is part of the larger BPX BlockPacks ecosystem, and we just launched a reward, kind of like a frequent flyer rewards miles token for the whole ecosystem. This falls under that. So by playing different tournaments, and we're going to have a digital, desktop version of the game, and you'll be able to accrue BPX from playing and winning in tournaments and different types of things.
So I accrue BPX, and then that's somehow translatable to a resource in the other side game.
Two different things. So one's an accrual just for playing, but just by holding the card, you'll get the drip from the resource.
Ooh.
So you don't even necessarily need to have, I think there'll be a rule where you maybe need to play at least one game to get the resource drip, just to have it as an active participation type of thing. But you don't necessarily have to play the game any more than that to receive that resource drip.
That's amazing. And I think that, again, that goes to what delineates for me sort of derivative projects from this new concept of layer twos, where you're actually building on top of an existing ecosystem. You're not interfering in it. You're trying to stay clear of certain stories by creating, sort of individualized characters or individualized storylines that can coexist no matter what happens. As you said, like, anything could go on in sort of a story, but your sort of Star Wars saga on this moon has to have like its own understandability and its own world. But the way that they interact and provide value back to the L1, I think, is really fantastic. In designing that, do you have to? I don't know. Do you guys consult lawyers? I mean, what is the approach before like going deep?
In terms of the design of the characters and those types of things,
All that stuff, like in terms
yeah,
of
I
the
mean,
characters.
yeah. So, and as it comes to the way that I guess the finance side of things and how all that kind of works out, I know Jeff and the Blockbacks team have a team of lawyers that they consult for the legal side on everything, as it concerns how all that works. For the design themselves, like, nothing we used really uses visually uses the IP or any copyright trademark of Yuga or the other side.
Exactly.
You can, if you put the resource next to the character, you can see the inspiration and you can see the different aspects that we use to like connect it. But certainly, like, it's now its own thing, really, and that's what we really wanted. We wanted to keep it as far away from being perceived as like, that's a Yuga asset or that's clearly a Yuga thing.
Yeah, and it is a bit of a slippery slope with Yuga, because Yuga being well known for, like, having very permissive ape copyright. The other side actually is a little tighter. If you've read the white paper, it's like, okay, well, you can't necessarily take a lot of things off of the other side and sort of use it as loosely as you would with the apes. But I also love that you guys declare yourselves sort of not formally from Yuga. And I think it's an important step, because I think a lot of people want to try and get the heat, right? And they want to try and like, oh yeah. So this might be, you never know. And they don't say anything. But here you guys clearly state like, hey, this is something we're building, as an L2, much like, mutant cartels, mutant hounds, applied primates. Like, they're just like, hey, we are building our own thing. We love the universe. We want to build our own thing.
Yeah, certainly. And, it'd be awesome if they, wanted to support us, just shout that out in case someone's listening. But, we for sure see it as a separate thing, but also like connected to the larger interoperable metaverse that they're working on over there. And, I see us being as like the trading card game of the other side. And I think it'd be really cool in the future to, on our lands, be able to come and actually play the game inside of other side as your coda or whatever it is.
Nice.
When that exists.
And that's the beauty of, I think, the ecosystems. And we're talking about the Yuga ecosystem currently. where they're discovering how to support projects like this through, the whether that's, grants, Ape DAO, trying to develop ways to support creators. I think is super important because, you guys are saying like, yeah, not formally, but hey, you might get a shout out from Gordon Goner, like, like Mutant Cartel did, so there's ways of supporting projects within your ecosystem as long as you're playing fairly, as long as you're not trying to like, fly by night, as long as you have, this concept and you're building with intent of delivering utility to holders. And so I just think it's a fantastic thing. Do you guys see yourselves trying to incorporate this to other properties? I know you guys have a big vision for how this plays out, or is that more for the other side?
I mean, with the Bantam Brigade specifically, I think it's going to be more tied to the other side at the moment. As a larger ecosystem, we have other brands that we're working on that employ the same like trading card system. There's one that we're going to be working on called the Wonders of the First. That's going to be more like Magic the Gathering and more that style of world building and characters. And so that's an exciting thing that'll be coming in the future. But that'll be its own, separate thing, and this will be its own kind of separate thing. Yeah.
And so for somebody who is really, they're loving the project that they're in, they've established that they have commercial rights, that they have the ability to, take their thing and do something. What advice would you give that person who wants to step into a role much like yourself of creative director of a project?
I mean, like we spoke about earlier, just kind of putting yourself out there and like, as it turned out, like I loved Pokemon cards. I loved collecting Magic the Gathering when I was younger. I played it, and like I even now like sitting at my desk, like I have like X-Men comic books and stuff here. Like
Dude, I have that one. Yeah, Gambit.
First appearance of Gambit.
Yeah, man.
And so I love to collect stuff, and that's always been a passion of mine. And I guess I've always been blessed to be able to create and do what I like to play as what I like to do for work as well. Does that make sense? Work isn't work for me because it's what I love to do. So I would say like my advice is if you love to do it and it doesn't feel like work, make that like how you make your money.
How you make your money. Clearly it's a flippant X-Men comics as well. Do you have like a whole set of like that sort of that Jim Lee era?
I have here we go. Here's a good one.
Let's go. Let's nerd out. Let's do this. Let the flag fly. Oh yes. Let the flag fly.
X-Men Jim Lee cover.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I just started collecting comics, so I got a good amount here, but Pokemon cards were my bread and butter. I did pretty well during the pandemic when they were at all-time highs, I gotta be honest.
Did you involve yourself in the AR game at all?
Yeah, played Pokemon Go. Yeah, and the great thing is, and maybe this is a little alpha, but we got one of our characters. If you want to pull up Nightstorm, he's kind of like what we want to be is like our Charizard of the Bantam Brigade, and
where's Nightstar?
We just started getting him in 3D and painted, and it'd be really cool to have some kind of cool AR activation with these guys.
Nightstorm.
There
it is. Ooh, vicious.
Yeah,
okay, so he has a 10 on him, so that's like the heaviest weight, right?
Yeah. So the way we did it is we actually we laid out all the resources 1 through 74 by rarity in the other side, and then we attached those rarities to the power rankings. So a grouping of the top rarest resources are going to be power.
So Onyx is very rare, therefore it gets a 10.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Correct. And so I think something like Lecco or Gluppy, those are definitely on the lesser rare. But that's not to say that eventually, we're going to create, like I said, these different kinds of equipments or artifacts that will make the game a little bit more strategy based, that will maybe power them up a little bit more or power this guy down a little bit more.
Well, I love the idea. I love the concept. And I love that, the way that you guys are presenting it, just very clearly, like, hey, We're not Yuga. We're a clear L2. And I think that's what I love about the term of just saying like, hey, I want to build on top with you guys. I don't want to interfere with anything, but I think that it'd be great eventually to get some sort of integration. But you're able to develop a proof of concept, and I think that that's the important part is being able to build with some permission. It's like, I sort of joked in the beginning of permissionless. Sure, you have to have like certain things down, but you should be able to just come up with an idea and develop it, and just say, oh hey, this is the thing I have. I do have some ideas of how it ties back if you'd like to formally talk.
Right.
But it can exist on its own as as a business, as whether that's a side hustle, whether that's a full-time thing. And I think that hopefully that's going to be the latter for you guys at BPX Collective, and you guys continue to build more and more.
Thank you. Yeah, and I flowers out to the Yuga team and what they're building, and I think it's a really unique usage of Web3 technology, where it's like, here we're building our thing, but also come and build with us, because if Yuga and other side goes where we all think it's going to go, and we're all in the Ready Player One universe in a few years, like it's as the tides rise, the ships all rise together. And so right now with how small Web3 is, with how much FUD is in the mainstream about all the scams going on, it's like we don't need to be infighting between ourselves.
No, and I think it's clearly established that Yuga is going to need to build just an epic community of many communities, and that's why sort of as you're in 10KTF as well, as sort of the theories on the show is that's why I think it was such a key acquisition to bring somebody who understands how to bring communities together. There's going to be 200,000 other deeds. That's a lot. They can't all be apes. Like there has to be a lot of other communities coming, and you have to open that up to builders if you want all those assets. If you want the Ready Player One world, you can't sit there and centralize build that whole thing. It has to be in conjunction with builders who are passionate, who are talented outside of resources that you might have, or ideas that you might be, stuck around, sort of building your central thing. And it's the brilliance of the outside idea that I think is going to really make the other side a really special place, including ideas like this. So thank you very, very much, Kisher. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great time. I love chatting. So I could go on for another half hour, but I know we can't. So
I know. That's the Twitter Spaces vibe. We'll do.
Yeah.
We'll connect on a Twitter Spaces, and we'll do just a very long vibe, because obviously we got a lot of things in common, and also I do hope to hear back about sort of the developments of this project as it goes on, and see you back here on the show talking about sort of how to play the game, because that's where I'm gonna start to really get interested in. Is how to play this game and how to win, so I can get some resources to the other side.
Let's go, for sure.
Right.
We'll make it happen. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Kisher. Be well. And so amazing, having this idea and this concept of L2, and sort of gets in the jargon confused with layer twos in terms of technicality of like layer one Ethereum, layer two, Polygon. No, this is storified. It's taking that notion of what a layer one is, your layer one being your base PFP project in this instance, Board API Club, Yuga Labs, other side, and then building on top of that. How do you do that? How do you, so, it starts with projects that want to give you that permission, honestly. Like, we talk a lot about it, here on the show. Like, you basically just look at a lot of the ones that, are on 10KTF. They give you the rights, Sun Sound, that gives you the rights to amazing art that can inspire you to develop something based upon that world and that ecosystem. And if they're doing it right, they're going to support you. And if they're not we're going to support you. So like, subscribe, hit the little bell notification, because that's the only way you can tell I go live here on Twitter. So I appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.